So it's finally here, Power Rangers Unlimited HyperForce, the sequel and continuation of Power Rangers HyperForce. Now I can hear you typing in the comments right now and you're probably wondering, Ash, what's Power Rangers HyperForce? I've seen almost all 30 seasons of Power Rangers and I've never heard of this HyperForce season before. Well, Power Rangers HyperForce was a tabletop RPG that ran from 2017 to 2018, which seems like a lifetime ago at this point, but it was a tabletop RPG that was Power Rangers related and it was really awesome, really cool. It built up story, it was in real time, so you saw everything happening as it happened, and it was great. And it ended on this cliffhanger, and for the longest time, fans have been clamoring for a season 2 of HyperForce. Now, when HyperForce was ending, it was in the weird era and the shift of Hasbro buying the brand, so I'm not sure if it was meant to be a season 2 or if it was going to be a season 2, but for the longest time, fans have been wanting a season 2 of Power Rangers HyperForce. And now it looks like we're finally getting that sequel and that continuation with the comics, but not only that, the HyperForce Rangers will be playing a role in the Darkest Hour storyline moving forward, so that's something I'm really excited to talk about. Now, this HyperForce one-shot is being written by Melissa Flores and Megan Camarena. Now, Megan played Chloe Ashford in Power Rangers HyperForce, the Pink Ranger, and Melissa is the current writer on the MMPR comics. So, Melissa was actually the writer and director for a lot of Power Rangers HyperForce, so this series was basically their baby, and it's glad to see Megan come aboard and work on it as well, where you can have two people who worked closely with the source material writing this one-shot. But not only that, the cast of HyperForce is full of familiar faces you might have heard of. Marv is played by Peter Sadasso, who was known for playing Preston in Power Rangers Ninja Steel. Eddie Banks, the blue HyperForce Ranger, is Andre Meadows from Black Nerd Comedy. Jack Thomas, the yellow HyperForce Ranger, is played by Paulie Schreier, who was known for playing Bulk in the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers series and many other seasons. Vesper, the HyperForce Black Ranger, is played by Christina V. You've probably heard her voice in several things, whether it be anime or video games or different animated series. And the HyperForce Green Ranger, Joe, is played by Yoshi Sadasso, who was Coda in Power Rangers Dino Charge. And that's one thing that I love about Power Rangers HyperForce and its cast, because they come from all different corners of the internet and the media to come together to play this Power Rangers tabletop RPG game. It's freaking awesome. Now, because HyperForce was a tabletop RPG, it wasn't like your traditional Power Rangers show, so you had to use your imagination to sort of picture and understand what they were talking about as the episodes were airing. But seeing how we're getting the sequel with the comic, those locations, those characters are brought to life in this one-shot. And if you're a fan of HyperForce, you get to see some of these characters, some of these locations brought to life in this comic book, and it's freaking fantastic. So if you're a fan of Power Rangers HyperForce, you're definitely going to get a kick out of this one-shot. So without any further ado, let's do the recap, the review, the rundown, whatever you want to call it, of this comic of Power Rangers Unlimited HyperForce, because there is a lot to go over. So HyperForce takes place in a timeline where the Z-Wave never happened. So Chloe sums it up pretty well in the first couple of pages, where she recaps what happened in HyperForce, just in case you missed it, because I'm sure that a lot of readers would be jumping onto this who have not seen HyperForce. So they sum it up really well. So this universe is a universe where the Z-Wave never happened, because Chloe's father was the leader of the Alliance, which was a group of villains that was trying to stop the Z-Wave. And the good guys lost and the bad guys won, so that is crazy. So in this timeline, it's basically a wasteland. You've got Jen Scott's leading a resistance. It doesn't look good. And Chloe has joined forces with her father, and she's turned heel. She's turned bad guy. So we've got that going on within the first couple of pages. So we then run into Jack Thomas, the yellow HyperForce Ranger, and we get a scuffle between him and Chloe. And this fight is really freaking cool for how long it lasted. It's a short fight, but it's really freaking amazing, as we get to see Chloe don her pink Battleyzer form. That's right, a pink ranger with a Battleyzer, and it's a really freaking cool design. Now, this was something that was also in Power Rangers HyperForce, so once again, they're really pulling from all the references and bringing them to life in this comic, which is freaking amazing. And this Battleyzer looks great. I'm a huge fan of this Battleyzer design, but the whole reason why Chloe is working with her father is to find a way to save the timeline and fix it and restore everything back to normal. So that means working with your dad, who is the one that caused all this destruction. So Chloe ends up getting taken by force by Jack when Alpha 55 zaps her and knocks her unconscious, and Chloe is trying to do the lone wolf thing. She wants to save the timeline by herself, save Zordon, find her mum, and make sure everything goes right again. But they can't really do that on their own, and Jack insists on getting the team back together, and we learn that the HyperForce team has disbanded since then. You had Joe, who went after Nadira, that's right, Nadira from Time Force. Joe got married to that character in the nearby future, and if you've read Sins of the Future, you kind of get teasers of that reference of those events happening in that book. So you've got that, and Marv chased after him, so they ended up getting captured. And then you've got Vesper and Eddie, who broke it off seemingly, but they're in two totally different locations, and that's one thing I loved with these next couple of pages when we reunite with Vesper and Eddie, as we revisit locations that were based around episodes in Power Rangers HyperForce, and we get to see them again in this comic, which is really freaking cool, and it definitely got a kick out of me when I was reading this comic. So I loved revisiting these locations that we heard about in HyperForce and now we're seeing for the very first time, which is really freaking cool. So they end up going to the North Pole in Santa's village to find Vesper, and what it turns into is a scene of Jingle All the Way where they're just punching the crap out of elves, the elves that are rebelling, I guess, and that's just wacky, silly fun. And Vesper somehow has become the high elf, which is crazy within itself, but that's crazy. But I love the attention to detail where it's Jack's first time coming here, as in the episode of HyperForce, I believe Paul Schreier, known for playing Bulk, he wasn't in that episode, so this is his first time experiencing that, so I like that attention, the continuity and detail there. So they get Vesper, and then they go to find Eddie in Ye Old Times, London, King Arthur's Court, which is another location they visited in HyperForce. So the whole reason why Eddie is in this timeline is because when him and Vesper broke up, Vesper just dumped him here, like dumped Eddie here in this timeline, in this period of history, and Eddie's ending up marrying a princess now, and Vesper doesn't like that, and as soon as they meet up again, they start arguing, and then on the next page they start making out. If this comic wasn't like in the lines of sort of like teenage mature, I'm pretty sure they'd be having angry sex right now with like how quickly they start arguing and then on the next page they start making out. It is insane with how quickly it flipped from a matter of seconds with these two characters. After that, we then get this emotional moment where Chloe is upset that the timeline is broken, but while this was going on, instead of fixing it, the other Rangers were off playing Santa and getting married, and now they're laughing at the shenanigans that they were having. So Vesper just like outright says, hey, the timeline broke because of your dad, and Chloe just breaks down crying saying, yeah, my dad is the whole reason why this happened, and did you ever think how it would have affected me? And this is where Jack has this really nice moment where he says, look, I'm not a family man, but I've always considered you as family. And then you have Eddie saying that he was ashamed that they lost, so he ran away. And then you have this moment where Vesper says she learnt what a family meant by being on the Ranger team. So Jack says, let's get our HyperForce family back together. And that's one thing I like about HyperForce. These guys are a bunch of misfits and weirdos and wackadoos, but they're family. In the end, they're family. They're a Ranger family like most of the other Rangers. They're a Ranger team of family, and they stick together. And that family's been torn apart, and now they've got to come together. So after this is where things get crazy, where they're intercepted by another ship. Alpha 55 is shut offline, And this is where we see Chloe's heel turn come into full effect, where she betrays the team because while they were out looking for the others, she had her father track down Marv and Joe, and this results in all the other Rangers getting captured by the enemy as they plan on using the HyperForce ship to conquer other timelines. So after that, we then meet Chloe's father, who straight up looks like an anime villain with the design, looks like a middle-aged Sephiroth. Not saying that's a bad thing, but I do dig their design with like the long hair and the beard. Looks like a really menacing design with how they look. So, of course, Chloe is upset. She wants to impress Daddy, but Daddy says, kill your friends because they're going to be a hindrance later on. So they walk away and Chloe begins having a chat with the HyperForce Rangers. And this is where we learn the big reveal where the Darkest Hour storyline stuff is coming into play. But you can kind of see that when Chloe's father enters the room because you can see one of the brand new supercharged putties standing in the room. So the hints are there that the Darkest Hour stuff is coming into play right now. So I love the opening for this conversation where Chloe's like, explain everything, you've got a minute. And Marv goes, Nadira told Joe that your father has a new mistress. And Chloe's like, gross, that's disgusting. And Marv's like, not that kind of mistress. So Joe then reveals that there is someone called Mistress Vile, an upgraded version of Rita Repulsa from another dimension. And Chloe's like, you gotta be shitting me, you're making that up. And Joe's like, I'm not. And apparently she's making big moves in the name of a bad guy called Dark Spectre. Does that sound familiar? So this is already setting the stage that Mistress Vile is making her moves, but not only that, her reach has spread out into this timeline, into this dimension with everything going on. So that is freaking crazy and insane. So Chloe drops the morphers down and says, fish him out if you want. So after this, she then talks to Alpha 55 and then realizes the dangers of her father actually having access to the HyperForce ship, because she thought that if she helps her father, she can actually sort of work from the inside and make everything normal. But she's in and over her head and she hasn't realized how bad she's messed things up with the decision she's made. So she comes to terms with everything going on right now. Chloe then confronts her father, and I love the design of the room where she confronts her father because it is very Jedi, very Empire Strikes Back with everything going on with it. Like, the bridge across, like, the room is very, like, so Star Wars like with how this ship is set up. It's so freaking cool. Like, I love the design. They're the vibes it was giving me with how this room is set up. So Chloe confronts her father and he's like, hey, I've done everything I need to do on this timeline, but that was only a test because Mistress Vile and Dark Spectre, we can reshape the entire universe, the Morphin grid itself, and Chloe doesn't have any of that. She's like, no way, I'm going to stop you. Now, while this is going on, you do have the other HyperForce Rangers breaking out of their jail cell. You do get a comedic scene where Vesper's torn off one of her arms and she's using it as an extender to the reach out and grab the morphers that are on the floor that Chloe put there. So that was really funny seeing that scene there. But the other Rangers bust out of prison and start busting some bad guys in this fight scene. But as this is going on, things get really out of control really fast, as we've not only that got the deal with the Alliance soldiers, we've also got the Dark Spectre putties that we've been seeing in the MMPR run, and they are a huge trouble because there are one too many of them for Chloe and the HyperForce Rangers to fight off. So the whole reason why Chloe's dad is evil and wants to conquer the universe is power. That's why he's working with Mistress Vile. Absolute power they want. So that's your typical villain spiel, that they want power. Now, although we're getting a fight on a spaceship, you don't get the Luke I am your father moment in this comic here. The reveal that we get is Chloe's mother is actually alive, because for the longest time she thought that she was dead, but her father just blurts out saying, no, your mother's alive, she's been alive the whole time, haha, stupid. And that's the big reveal, that Chloe's mother is alive. But while this is all going on, like, shit is hitting the fan really quickly. But one thing that we see is really cool in this fight is that all the parties come together and they form this giant golem, and Chloe's father, Mr. Ashford, gets on top of it. And I kind of wish the fight continued here, because this is when it gets really freaking crazy. Like, we need Megazord action now. But Marv, being the leader, knows they can't win and decides to pull out while they can, because there's no winning this fight. Like, they even admit it when they escape. Like, we would have not won that. We would have died. So back on the ship, they have a discussion saying that whoever this Mistress Vile person is, they can't be good news, especially if they plan on taking over the Morphin grid. And Chloe gives this big speech by saying, hey, we can't fix what we broke. That's our mess. But there's no magic genie that's going to fix this, but we can still do some good and we can still save the Morphin grid. So to save the Morphin grid, they're going to need some allies. And that's what I love about the HyperForce team in this issue. Like I mentioned earlier, they're a family, they're friends, and they're a team, and they come together to make sure they can protect the Morphin grid, and that is freaking awesome. So, needing some allies, where do they go? None other than Animarium from Wild Force. And what we find on this last page is freaking insane. So the Rangers come across Taylor from Wild Force. That's right, the yellow Wild Force Ranger. And she is battle damaged, her suit is torn up, her helmet is broken, and whenever a Ranger has a broken helmet, you know they got messed up in battle, and especially Taylor's here, where half of it is missing. And in front of her is a very injured Princess Shayla, who was on basically death's door, it sounds like, according to Taylor. So Taylor doesn't trust the HyperForce Rangers because she says, hey, another Ranger just came by and basically wrecked shit, took my team, and left Princess Shayla for dead, and had a skeleton for a face. And the HyperForce Rangers ask, what did they go by? And Taylor replies with, the Death Ranger. And then on the final panel, you have the Death Ranger standing on a cliffside with a Death Ranger-ified Cole and a Death Ranger-ified Max standing behind them. And the HyperForce Rangers ask, well, what did this Death Ranger want? And Taylor responds with, they said their mistress wanted everything. And that's pretty much where that issue ends off on, where you have the Death Ranger standing on the cliffside with the Wild Force Rangers behind them. And that is a crazy freaking ending. But not only that, this issue was fantastic. Melissa and Megan knocked it out of the park with this issue, and I think they did a fantastic job telling a story with these characters and bringing them to life once again. But not only that, it looks like that the HyperForce Rangers will be playing a role in the Darkest Hour storyline. And seeing how we've already seen the preview pages for issue 110, I'm really excited to see where it's going to go moving forward, because now we've got a little bit of answers of what's going to happen next week when MMPR issue 110 drops. But overall, I love this issue. I freaking love seeing the HyperForce Rangers again. This issue, like I said at the start of the review, was basically a love letter to the fans of HyperForce. So if you love HyperForce, then you're definitely going to love this one shot. But not only that, this is going to tie into the Darkest Hour storyline. So if you've never seen HyperForce, then hopefully you got to fall in love with these characters or got to meet them for the very first time, which would be really great. But anyway, guys, I think I'm going to bring this review to a close here. What did you think of Power Rangers Unlimited HyperForce? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Tell me in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. And with that said, I'm out of here. Have a wonderful day or night. Peace out. Take care and goodbye.